Alireza Firouzja, what happened, bro? How did this happen? I was so hopeful that you would go on to win this candidates tournament and you would be the next challenger for Magnus Carlsen. But as of today, you are finishing last instead of first, and I'm just so disappointed, bro. I wanted you to play this match against Magnus, and Magnus also wanted you to qualify. He was excited to play a new opponent because he's tired of playing all the other opponents whom he has beaten before. And I'm not sure what Magnus is thinking right now. I'm sure he's pretty sad himself and can't process the fact that not only did you not finish first, you are actually finishing last in this tournament. And it's a pity because if Magnus now decides to not play the World Championship like he said he wouldn't if you didn't qualify, then it's a loss to the chess world. And I'm not sure how things are going to turn out if that happens, but I am extremely disappointed that you did not qualify, and your play in this tournament was not to your level. You know, you played some bad games, but especially the game against Nepo, which we're gonna see today, your play was abysmal, bro. Like, what was that? Like it seemed to me like you tried my opening, the Drunken Master Opening, but you didn't understand the position well enough to execute it. And maybe you did, but you went for it anyway. So if that's the case, then, well, I admire your fighting spirit, but I have to go through this game and ask you if you understood what you were getting yourself into, because you went for e4 and after e5, knight f3. Okay, Petrov. These days, man, Petrov, Berlin, it's not easy to get an advantage against those openings. I get it. So maybe, maybe try something else, not e4, maybe something else. Just maybe play g3, bishop g2, and try something like that, just to make a complex position. But no, you go for the Petrov, and maybe you add this idea in mind of d3, d4, and then d5. Nothing special, bro. And I'm sure you understand that. Because after knight e5, you go knight d4, you're keeping your pieces on. Well, okay. But it's not gonna be enough. Castles, knight c3, and bishop g4. Good move. Because now, if you play bishop e2, which I'm sure you understand, I hope you understand that's the best move, then bishop takes, queen takes, and the position sort of fizzles out. And white has a slightly better position, but that's about it. And black's play is pretty simple. I don't see you getting any advantage out of this position, and I think that you understood that. So for that reason, you went f3. So you're going for it, which I commend you for, because it's a must-win game. You have to win. You've lost quite a few games, and Ian Nepomniachtchi is the leader, so you have to beat him. So you play f3. Credit to you for trying. Bishop d7, and now you see that your king is exposed, so you're getting ready to castle bishop e2 and castles. But dude, Nepo is smart. He plays c6. He's gonna create this weakness here, and we know you can't take on c6 because that just gives you a worse position anyway. So castles, and now you've got a weakness on d5. And Nepo played queen b6, which pins your knight to the king. And when I saw this position, I knew that you're gonna struggle here in this position, because black is already better. He's got the open c file for his rook. He's got the open e file for his other rook. And what have you got? You've got nothing. Your bishop is tied up to the defense of this pawn. Your rook can't come out because this bishop is tied up. And if you try to move a pawn here to protect this pawn, then your knight becomes loose, and the c file becomes even more powerful for that rook. So you've got a lot of problems here to solve. And so you first played king h1, which is correct, because now you at least free this knight from the pin, also free your queen, potentially, after this knight moves away. But then after rook a to c8, you went g4. Bro, That that doesn't work, man. I can only hope that you understand and that you understood during the game that G4 cannot work, even without calculating. Your intuition should, I hope, or did, I hope, tell you that G4 cannot work. And for the sake of the audience, let's just see why that move cannot work without even calculating. Your opening lines, or your opening space against your own king, without black having any weaknesses here to exploit. He's got an open c file. He's already aiming for c3. So at any point, he can play rook takes c3, not maybe in this position, but after takes, he's got knight takes d5 ideas. So he's got this exchange sack on tap at any moment. Plus he's got the other open file for his other rook. So his pieces are going to be far more active in this position. Whereas your bishop is tied to the defense of this pawn on b2. Your rook is tied to the first rank. It cannot move. It's completely inactive. But still you're insisting on g4. That is not going to work. And I just hope that you understood that, but you still went for it because you could not afford to play defensively in this way. And if that's the case, well, credit to you for trying and entertaining us with this, but this is not going to work. So, okay, Nepo stops your g5 idea with h6, and now you double down on that with h4. Okay, so you're going for it fully. And Nepo just came to the board, looked at the position, and quickly played rook f to e8 and hit the clock and be like, all right, I'm not afraid. Go for it. Because he's a super GM, bro. You're a super GM too. And he understands things about chess that you also do, and I probably don't. But he can see that this cannot work. He's got developed pieces. He's got rooks activated. None of his pieces are passive. So this kind of nonsense cannot work in principle. And as a super GM, you should know that. And I hope that you knew that. But you still went for this line, which is a little perplexing. Because you got a weakness on d5. Imagine that you had a position like this, where d5 was well defended, and the c file was closed, so his rooks are not active. Now you can play f4, knight g6, g4, and this is a great position for you. It's gonna lead to a fantastic advantage for you soon, because everything is closed. He's got an open e file, but he cannot do much with it right now, and you're able to bring these pieces out later on, bishop e3, because this pawn is defended, and that would be much better. But without that, with the absence of that pawn on c4 defending d5, and that pawn on c5 blocking the c file, you've got yourself a big disadvantage. So this h4 idea is not going to work. So let's see what happened. You went for g5, takes, knight h5, and I don't know if you intended to play f4 here and then realized that doesn't work. I'm not sure. I think that's probably what happened, because I think that you wanted to play f4 here, but then if that's the case, I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed, because there's no other way of saying it, but you lack some positional understanding of these structures. So maybe learn a thing or two from me. I'm not a super GM. I'm only a national master, but obviously there's, if you don't understand this, then there's some holes in your chess understanding, and you need to learn some things. If you want to play the Drunken Master type positions, then maybe learn a thing or two from the Drunken Master himself. Not putting you down too much. But I'm surprised. I'm surprised that this is what happened, because your intuition should have told you that can't work. But knight g3 check now, king g2, and knight takes f1. And you probably saw this, and then you thought, okay, f takes e5, d5, knight c2, and I trap this knight. But are you really trapping that knight? He can play, in fact, play knight h2 here, which probably you saw later, because after king takes, you've got queen f2 check, and then the king is in trouble. Also, you can forget about this knight and play bishop takes g5, because now if takes, then queen takes b2, and everything is falling like it did in the game. So let's actually see the game then, because you realize that you cannot play f4, so you had to play this pathetic move king g2, and maybe that was part of your plan all the way. But after knight g6 and then f4, you thought that, okay, I've got f4 defended with my rook and bishop, but bro, that doesn't work. Chess doesn't work like that. Knight takes f4 check. Takes, and now Nepo hits you with queen takes b2. And now you begin to see that all of your pieces are just loose. And this knight is loose. This bishop is pinned to the king. That bishop is loose. He's gonna get traded off. That bishop's probably gonna come to g5. Rook's pointing on e2. Queen is loosely defending knight on d4. It's just a horrific position. After knight e4, he hits you with rook c4, exploiting the fact that this bishop is pinned. Now d4 is threatened, so you move back, and then he comes to the board, looks you in the eye, and plays bishop takes g5. And I'm sure this position has already been analyzed dozens of times, and I'm sure you've seen this too, so I don't want to go further into this position. But that's what happened in the game, and you got completely crushed. And so h4 was the wrong idea, because this is, I've played these type of positions hundreds of times, maybe even thousands, in the Drunken Master Opening. But the key difference there is that this rook of yours, which is sleeping here on a1, is actually on g2 in those positions. And if this rook were on g2, then this position would have worked. So let's look at that. Let's look at a position where rook is actually on g2. So let's bring your h4 position on the board. This one. So imagine magically your rook has moved to g2 in that position, and now he plays rook f2 e8. Now you can go g5, because if takes knight h5, then g3 is already defended by the rook. So you can just play f4, attack both these knights, f takes e5 and bishop takes h5, and that's just winning. So he has to move back, let's say knight h7, but then f4, knight g6, f5, knight e5, f6, because he cannot take. If he takes, then, well, check to the king, and then f takes e7. You see the difference between this rook on a1 and this rook on g2. I call this the Drunken Rook in the Drunken Master Opening. And if you see my games in the Drunken Master, I'll put a link in the description. You'll see how key a role this rook plays in these sort of setups. And if you don't understand that, maybe like and subscribe and watch a few of my videos. Maybe you'll learn a thing or two. Of course, you know a lot more than me, but maybe there's just one thing or two I know better than you. So maybe for that reason, watch some of my videos or read some of what I've shared in the article, because obviously you completely misplayed this position, trying to go for a Drunken Master type attack without the Drunken Rook. That doesn't work, bro. In fact, let me bring you to this position. If the rook's here, you don't even need h4. You can play a move like knight f5 in this position, attacking this bishop, because if he takes, then you play gf, and now you've got g file opened up, and your double rooks will hit g7, then that's going to be an excellent position. So that doesn't work. So let's say he tries rook f2 e8, but now you can play rook g1, and you're piling up on the G file. So let's say he tries bishop d8, and now you can go h4, and he's not got any moves in the position. And let's say king f8, now you can play queen d2, knight takes h6 next, or knight takes g7, and it's just crushing knight g8. He goes back defending, then you play knight e4, attacking this guy, and if he takes, then well, gf, and you've got your open file to exploit this position. If he doesn't take, plays a move like bishop e7, then well, you can just play b3 here and bring your other piece into the game, and it is completely crushing. Let's look at some other lines here. After hg in this position, let's say he tried rook takes c3, like we were talking, because since I mentioned that there is this open file, he has got this idea. So let's use this idea, because gf6 is not on because he has rook takes c1 first. So bc3, and then knight takes d5. Okay, he's got the action sack. But the problem for black now is this rook is free to move, so you can actually just play rook h2. And if takes on c3, then queen c2, and threatens queen h7, check and mate, and also threatens his knight. So he cannot do that. So let's say he goes g6, then after queen e1, queen h4, you're threatening mate, so bishop g7. Now you can play f4 and open up on the f file, and I'm sure you know how to destroy black in this position. So that's the type of position where h4 g4 works. For that you need this rook into play, either on g2, maybe on g1, but g2 is better because it keeps your king safe. So that's what you needed there, and without that this does not work, because this rook here on a1 is not part of it. It's sleeping, and it's not gonna be involved in the attack on the king side. And speaking of sleeping, I also found out that you played some blitz games or bullet games. In fact, 250 bullet games against Daniel Naroditsky. The previous night, instead of sleeping, you played till 5 a.m. against Daniel. And sure, you won, but dude, you need some sleep to play the Drunken Master Opening. You don't have to get practically drunk by staying up till 5 a.m. to be the Drunken Master. No, you have to actually get good sleep so that you can come and play like the Drunken Master. So, get some good sleep, get some good rest, and then you can play your best chess. Otherwise, you're gonna end up playing. This is probably one of the worst games of your life, dude. And I just hope that you learn a lot from this, and I hope that you at some point in the future qualify for the World Championship and play some exciting chess at the World Championship level. Until then, the rest of us in the chess world can just hope that Magnus Carlsen plays his World Championship matches, doesn't give up on it completely, and we get to see some really good classical chess. So I hope you learn from this tournament, learn from me a little bit, and come back stronger and be a much better, much stronger player in the future. All the best.